And I'm gonna come off video and just watch. I'm not video ready.
All right, go ahead, Gail, if you want to
Good
let everyone know.
luck.
Good morning. Hi, Maria. Oh, Mary. Hi, Mary.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Michelle?
I'm very well, thank you. Hi,
Great.
Pat
Hi.
and Karen. Oh, it's so good to see everyone. And Dina.
Good morning.
And as you're hopping on, if you want to put in the chat where you are tuning in from, we always like to see where everyone is, especially across the country. I doubt the West Coast because it's only 8 a.m., but who knows? We've had some of our West Coasters join from their bedroom. So, but welcome everyone. And from Jackson, New Jersey. Nice. All right, so it's 11:01 and I can never say that. Is it Womelsdorf?
Womelsdorf.
Womelsdorf, Boyertown. All right, so we have all the locals. I'm out in the King of Prussia, Norristown area, so not too far. But thank you everyone for being here. If you are in this area, you know it's a dreary day, so no better place than to watch a cooking show. I have with me a special co-host, Gail. She will be our moderator today, and she's our Vice President of Operations for Unite for Her. So I'll have a good stopping point where she will talk a little bit about what she does for Unite for Her. So that will be a little bit later. We are recording today, so we can upload this to our library for anyone that was not able to make any of the dates. So that's her library. And Gail, if you have a moment, you could always put the link in there, but I can always put the link when I send the recipes after class. Just remember to keep yourselves on mute if you have any background noise, but you are more than welcome to come off mute and ask any questions, or if you have any comments, or if you notice I've completely missed any ingredients, I need your help with this. Sometimes I forget the big things. So anyway, so this theme for November, December, celebrate the side. So I took all of those popular side dishes that we've known about forever, the green bean casserole, macaroni and cheese, cranberry sauce, and I'm lightening them up a little bit. So that was a tall order because a lot of people don't mess with my mac and cheese, right? But I promise you, I tried a few recipes and I got it right, because we still want to have all that flavor. 'Tis the season, but I think you're going to be really surprised to see how I changed up the ingredients. Gail will be dropping the recipes into the chat as I move to each recipe, and of course you'll get them after class. But one thing we're going to try new today is a food for thought moment. You know, as we put these classes together, there's always that standout. So for this class, cranberries. And we may have heard all of the antioxidant power that cranberries have. So I'm going to make cranberries my food for thought moment. So a couple well-known facts and not so well-known facts. We all hear that cranberries are good for what? Urinary tract infections, right? So it can lower your risk of a urinary tract infection, not for everyone, but there is some evidence with that. There are it's this plant chemical called polyphenols, and not to get too sciencey, but cranberries have an extraordinary amount of these polyphenols that can help improve insulin sensitivity. They support our cardiac, our heart health, cardiac health. It aids in digestion. It can help boost our immune system, lowers our risk of respiratory infection, which we've been hearing a lot about in the news. And they store really well. They last a long time in your refrigerator. You can freeze them for a few months. just a half a cup of cranberries, it equals a full serving of fruit. Now, of course, we do have to be careful about that sugar component. If you buy dried cranberries, there's a lot of added sugar. So just be mindful how much you're using. They are hard to find, but there are cranberries sold with no added sugar. So for the cranberry recipe that I'll do at the end of class, I'm using honey instead. So that's our food for thought moment. And every class we're going to try to incorporate that. So hope you liked a little bit of that food science and some fun facts. All right, so let's get started. The first recipe that I'm doing is called warming milk punch. Erin has this fantastic mocktail recipe. Erin's the queen of mocktails. She always makes these really fun mocktails, either for her cooking demonstrations or for our virtual hangouts. And there's this one called a warming milk punch. I know that doesn't sound like a mocktail, and quite honestly, the ingredients really are not like a mocktail, but it's still perfect for this time of year. So if you've never heard of a simple syrup, all it is just sugar and water, or you can buy simple syrup made already for you. So what I did before class is I used a half a cup of water, a half a cup of sugar, put it on the stove, heated it up until the sugar dissolves. So that's what I have going on in this saucepan. The next thing that you can do is infuse anything into your simple syrup. The sky is the limit, whether it's something sweet like cinnamon sticks or savory like rosemary. The sky is the limit. I'm going to be using allspice berries. So these are berries literally from a bush. So sometimes when we think of allspice, we think of, oh, it's a combination of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves. That's not true. It's just called allspice. So I have the berries here. They are whole, they're dried. I just hit them with my meat tenderizer to break them up a little bit so the natural oils and all that good stuff have opened up. And I'm going to pour it right into my simple syrup. So this is just a couple tablespoons worth. And it will simmer for 10 minutes. And then I'll take it off heat and let it sit for another 30 minutes. So that will be going on during class. And I will set the timer for this. There we go. All right, so let's move to our first recipe, and that is our green bean casserole. Before class, I have my green beans already cooked here, and they're in a dish, a large baking dish that I already sprayed. So they are fresh green beans, but you can buy frozen green beans, whatever you have in your pantry. I just use the French ones. I like that they're nice and thin, but you can buy the thicker ones as well. So they're all cooked, waiting in the wings. The next thing I did before class is I sauteed some onions. So it looks like grilled onions. I took an onion, a raw onion, and sliced it into very thin rings, just added some olive oil. And I sauteed them until they really cooked down, not burnt, but cooked down. I have warming on my stove, just a very tiny very tiny pan. And I'm going to add some almond flour because I'm going to toast it up a little bit. We know that anytime we toast anything, whether it's nuts or flours, it just brings out a nice toasty flavor. Do you have to do it? No, but I think it is a nice little thing to do to make your dish even more flavorful. So just let that sit for a little bit as it browns. Obviously, you need to keep an eye on it so it doesn't burn. One thing I'm going to do is add just a little bit of olive oil to help it along. And what I'll be doing with this is coating the green beans. So if you think about the traditional, to about medium low. If you think about the traditional green bean casserole, it always has those wonderful crunchy onions on top, right? Fried, delicious. I will never turn that away. But since we're making things lighter, we're going to make our own onion topping. And so this is what I'm doing now. So again, toasting this up. I have my oven preheated to 375. So once everything is all together, it will be popped into the oven. All right. So starting to brown already, looks really nice. Now let's talk about that I'm using almond flour. Do you have to use almond flour? You do not. If you have a gluten sensitivity or if you're staying away from white flour, you can use the alternative flour. So there's chickpea flour, the almond flour, every flour under the sun. So whatever you want to experiment with. I will say, you know, as we talk a lot about the crazy food prices, right? Let's talk about the pink elephant in the room. Some of these alternative flours might be a little on the pricey side. So if you'd rather just use your whole wheat flour or regular white flour, that's okay. I'm all about whatever you have in your pantry and using that up. However, I am, it's down in the back. I am using almond flour for both my recipes. So I thought it was worthwhile to purchase the almond flour. You can use it in baked goods, anything like that. So if you have other uses for it, then I think it's worthwhile. All right. I think this is good to go. So again, I have my onions that are already cooked right here. Add my toasted almond flour. And feel free to make a lot of this, maybe double it if you use, I missed that question. Gail, did you catch that?
I did. The question was if using wheat flour instead of the almond flour, would you want to toast that as well?
I would, yeah, just watch it because it's not as, the regular flour is going to be a little bit lighter and fluffier, so just keep an eye on it. But that's a good question. So what I also added is some Parmesan cheese to this. So again, I have my sauteed onions, my almond flour, and some Parmesan cheese.
Michelle, there was also a question of whether you used red onions or white onions.
Good question. I used white, but you can use red as well, whatever you have on hand. Cooking onions, Vidalia onions will get a little bit of sweet flavor, but I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, so this will be my topping. And as I was saying, feel free to double this recipe and throw it on top of anything that you're cooking the rest of the week. I always make more because I like the extra onions on top of my dish to Parmesan. Yes, I was just getting that to that. So there are a lot of great alternative cheeses on the market. So you do not even have to add the Parmesan cheese. You can just do the flour. But I think now there's so many alternative non-dairy cheeses out there. So whether it's feta or Parmesan cheese or cheese that looks like shredded cheese. So take a look and see what you can find if you wanted to go completely plant-based, which is great. All right, so what I also did before class was chop up some mushrooms and saute them. So I'll start warming these back up. So the recipe calls for cremini onions, white onions, baby bella or onions, mushrooms, baby bella mushrooms, those exotic mushrooms, whatever you decide to do. These were on sale. They were like $1.60 at ShopRite. There was a manager's special going on, which is always great. And I chopped them up. I sauteed them, and onions release water or release their juices. So once the water releases, keep it on the stove and let the mushrooms reabsorb, because you don't want any more liquid. Because if you think about it, you know, when you're doing the regular green bean casserole, you're using cream of mushroom soup. So that's nice and thick and hearty. So we're really trying to get as much liquid absorbed. So once the liquid was all absorbed, I just put it aside. So one question I meant to ask at the beginning, is there anyone cooking along with me today? So I can make sure you're on track and I'm not going too fast. Okay, I'll take that as a no, unless someone puts yes in the into the chat. Perfect. All right, next step, as I'm warming the onions, first, why do I keep calling them onions? Warming the mushrooms. I'm going to roughly chop some garlic. The recipe calls for 4. We always go a little bit rogue and add more. If you're not tolerating whole garlic right now, it's okay. You can leave it out, add, a little bit more of whatever spice. You can use your garlic press instead. There are tubes of garlic in the refrigerated section of your produce department, and you can use that. Just put a little squeeze, whatever you'd like to use. It lasts a long time in the refrigerator. They also have tubes of ginger as well. Maybe go for garlic powder instead. So all of that would work. The beauty of cooking, which is why I'm a cook and not a baker, because baking is more of a science and I'm not good at that. I may be able to do a cooking demo, but that's because I can fudge and make mistakes and no one will know. All right, so just giving these a rough chop, or you can keep going and mince it. You can use your, if anyone still has those, remember the Pampered Chef and the press. I think I've had mine for 30 years. All right, let's toss this in. Always trying to put in the garlic last so it doesn't burn. I'm using a cast iron skillet. You do not have to use a cast iron skillet. Whatever you have, whatever you are using though, make sure it has a lip that's a little bit higher, because we're going to keep adding some liquids and you don't want it to overflow. Perfect timing. Okay. So I have simmered my sugar water or simple syrup with the allspice. I'm going to toss it aside and just let it continue to infuse. And I won't toss it because then it might spill, right? Okay, so we have our garlic chopped. The garlic and the mushrooms the flavors are marrying together. The next step is to sprinkle some chickpea flour. So chickpeas or garbanzo beans, just processed down into a flour. Again, if you know you're going to use it again, that's great. If not, maybe just use almond flour also. The main purpose here is just to talk about all the different types of alternative flours that you can use. And, there's really not a lot of taste, just like a regular flour. You're not going to think, oh my gosh, this tastes like beans out of a can. And so this flour is just coating the mushrooms and the garlic. All right, I'm going to turn it up to a little bit past medium. Next, I'm using vegetable broth. So if you don't have vegetable broth on hand and you only have chicken broth, that's completely fine, But again, as we go more towards plant-based, you can use the vegetable broth. Make sure it's low sodium or sodium-free. Now, what did I just add? Are you ready for this? I added oat milk. So before I lose you, before you turn this video off, let me explain. Because again, thinking about the nice, thick creamy mushroom, cream of mushroom soup. I promise you this will thicken up. It's going to take a little bit of time. Let it simmer. I just bumped it up to a medium high. And you don't have to boil it, but just a medium high so it comes to this nice simmer, and continue to whisk it and it will thicken up, I promise. And again, it's not like with the almond flour, it's not going to have, I'll use this one. You're not going to taste the oat milk in this, all right? If you want to use almond milk, that's fine too. I prefer oat milk because it is a little bit creamier. If you really want to keep stepping it up, maybe go to a macadamia milk. And by the way, this smells really nice. Make sure it's unsweetened. We don't want sweetened almond milk in our green bean casserole. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. While that is simmering, I'm going to move on to the next recipe, which is our macaroni and cheese. And again, I tried hard with this one. The first recipe that I tried was good, but I was like, this isn't mac and cheese. This does not taste like mac and cheese. Okay, so I did the same thing before class. And I cooked my pasta. Okay, you notice I have some nice green in there, which is broccoli. You can use anything you want. You can use spinach, you can use cauliflower, red pepper, whatever. This is a great recipe if you have some vegetables that are on their last leg, to put that in instead. Just because I put broccoli in, you don't have to do that. The pasta is chickpea pasta. So again, don't turn this off. You can use regular pasta. You can use whole wheat pasta. I love chickpea pasta because of all the alternative pastas, like red lentil pasta, black bean pasta, it holds up nicely, and the taste, I don't want to say you can't tell difference. You know it's not regular pasta, but it's pretty close. So my husband is first generation Italian. So if he was able to, if he enjoyed it, then that's a pretty good test right there. I don't know if I'd give it to my mother-in-law who is who is off the boat, but my husband gave it a thumbs up. So, and when we use chickpea pasta, we're getting more fiber and protein from the beans. So all around, it's a great option to try.
Michelle, there's a comment about using corn and rice pasta, which Melissa feels is closer to real pasta.
What is that? Corn and rice pasta?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've never
had
not
that
tried
either.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Thanks for bringing that up.
I too have converted my husband to chickpea pasta, and chickpeas are his least favorite food in the world. Like, but we've gotten them,
That's interesting. See, I'm glad you said that, just to prove
the
my
pasta
point.
doesn't taste like chickpeas at all. I mean, I personally don't think chickpeas would have that much taste, but
There you go. There you go. All right, that's thickening up nicely. The smell is so good, so good. All right, this has been sitting for a little bit, so I'm just going to zhuzh it up a little bit. All right. If you have never purchased an almond flour or a chickpea flour, Bob's Red Mill, you've never come across his products, this is what the bag looks like. He has every type of flour and seeds and oats and muesli under the sun, so you can't go wrong. Is the broccoli raw or steamed? Thank you, Dina, for bringing that up. Guess what? I boiled them together. So I brought my pot to a rolling boil and I boiled them together. So you don't need to fully boil it because we're putting it in the oven. And both for the green bean casserole and the mac and cheese, my ovens are both preheating to 375. For the green beans, they can be blanched. So what blanching means, you bring your pot of water to a rolling boil, you throw whatever vegetable you have that you're working with in there, and just for like 1 to 2 minutes, then you throw it into an ice bath to stop it cooking. So you can get a big bowl, throw the ice in there, fill it up with cold water, and then it stops the cooking. So when you are making the, or blanching the green beans, turn this off, this is great. When you are blanching the green beans, it's just like that tender bite. It's not like you're still crunching on it, and then it's also not like it's totally like an army green color and it's mushy. You don't want it to get to that point. All right, so my mushroom sauce is done. Last thing I'm going to put in there is some Parmesan cheese to thicken it up a little bit. If you did not want to add more cheese, maybe add either a little bit of flour or maybe some cornstarch to thicken it back up. But this is the last step, to add some more Parmesan cheese. So that's why you want to get a low sodium broth, because we are using this cheese, you'll get enough sodium from this. All right. I want to show you how thick this is before I pour it. Get a little dish here. So that is oat milk. Look at that, nice and thick. So you don't have to worry about this being watery. Put this aside. Bring back my green beans. Everything's off. Oh, there they are over here. I use silicone pot holders. There's a good reason for that. I used to teach cooking classes for kids, and I would go to their school, and there was a nice little kitchen in their school, and they always loved, and this class was all boys, super fun, all boys, and they always wanted to take the stuff out of the oven. Fine. So they were using a regular cloth pot holder, and this one little boy touched the heating element and he pulls, it's not funny. It's not funny, but it's funny because nothing happened. And it was so innocent. He pulled the glove out, and there was just like this big flame. So I grab it from him and I put it out, and I thought I need to get silicone gloves for the kids. So I was waiting to be fired on the spot, and that could happen to anyone, right? Not just a young man. What you could also do with this recipe, in addition to the, just gonna mix this in addition to the onions, is maybe toast up some slivered almonds, and you can put that on top too. You know, we always talk about adding some nutrition to this, and that's a great way. All right, so I'm spreading this around. You do not have to use a dish like this. You can use whatever you'd like. You can also have this recipe, or cut it in half, or you can make more of it. This is a great make ahead recipe. You could do it the day before. It freezes very well. All right. I'm going to give it a little bit of a toss with the tongs to really get it in there. just to make sure everything is coated. And I did, if I didn't mention already, I sprayed the pan or the dish. All right. Last but not least, I just use my hands and spread the onions all over the top. And that is it. It does, honestly, there are some steps to this, but it's so worth it, and it's not complicated. So I'm going to pop this in the oven. Let's do 20 minutes and see where that takes us. So I'm going to clean up for the next recipe, and I want to give Gail the opportunity to talk a little bit about what she does for Unite for Her. Again, she's our Vice President of Operations. She is the know it all, and I don't mean that negatively of Unite for Her. We're always going to Gail for questions, so she's a great resource for all of us. But Gail, I'll turn it over to you. I'm going to mute myself and clean my bowl.
Okay. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. As Michelle said, my name is Gail Kelly. You may have received emails from me. One of the many things I do is to communicate some of our passport options to our participants. But I've been with Unite for Her for 9.5 years. I was employee number 3 as we were growing. We just added number 24 this week. So we have grown an awful lot in those 9 years, going from, a local organization in the greater Philadelphia area to now having national reach. I've done a lot of different jobs. Back when there were only a few of us, you just do whatever needed to be done. So I feel like I've done most of the jobs that we have now to some extent, although I will never do the cooking. That is definitely, we joke, not one of my strong suits. But I primarily do just a lot of the back end work, trying to keep the organization running. I do a lot of tracking of passport usage and just kind of the administrative face behind the camera of what it takes to keep the organization going and allow us to continue to grow and serve more and more participants. This year, we work on a fiscal year, so from July through June 2023, we expect that we're going to have 5,000 participants in our program across the country. And so it's been a great experience to grow, but along with that has been obviously some challenges in growing so quickly and adding so many employees. But it's an amazing organization and an amazing place to work, to be surrounded by a group of men and women who just are so dedicated to our mission. It's so rewarding to be surrounded and interact with them and with you, our participants, every day. So I'm really excited to be able to be Michelle's wing person this morning and help with the administrative background here. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gail. I appreciate that. And yeah, when you say there were 3 of us, it's just mind-boggling. When I joined in 2019, there was 13 of us. And I think we have someone new starting in January, right? That would bring us up to 25.
Yes, we have a full-time bookkeeper joining us January 2nd. So that will be a 25. And hopefully, I think that will be our holding place for the next year or so as we sort of grow into that 25 people and reevaluate responsibilities and move things around to what makes sense. You know, when you start, as I said, when we're small and everybody just does whatever needs to get done, now we're trying to sort of take a little bit more of an approach of making sure, you know, we have responsibilities that match people's skills and make sense organizationally to be the most efficient that we can be. So the more efficient we are, the more participants we can serve.
Perfect. Thank you, Gail. Perfect timing. And yes, thank you, Gail, for everything that you do. Such a support to all of us as well. All right, so moving on to our mac and cheese. I talked a little bit about the broccoli and the type of pasta that I use. So we're going to go ahead and make this sauce. I have a small onion. You can go a little bit bigger. This is what I had to use, and doesn't have to be fancy. I'm just going to give it a rough chop, or you can mince it. It will be going in with our pasta after I saute it. So I will be using butter to saute the onions. You do not have to use butter. You can use olive oil. We are fans of butter at Unite for Her, so 'tis the season. It really, you know, we're not eating all of this in one sitting, so we have to look at it that way. So don't let that deter you or think, oh my gosh, I thought she said she was lightening this up. So, okay, so I'm gonna throw my butter in. It's about a tablespoon and a half. If you want to add less, like split it up and do just a little bit of butter and a little bit of olive oil, that's fine too, or avocado oil, totally fine. All right, let's add the onions. And again, this will go into the oven, so we don't need to fully cook everything. All right, so we're going to let that sit a little bit and saute. Next, I'm going to add my chickpea flour. So I'm using this again, regular flour, almond flour. This chickpea flour will, same thing with the mushrooms in the last recipe, will be coating the onions. This will all happen pretty quickly with a hot skillet and the butter. Oh my gosh, it smells so good. And make sure to scrape up any of those brown bits that stick to the bottom of the pan. I do have this on medium. Next step, I will be adding my vegetable broth. So I encourage you to make both these vegetables because you're using a lot of the ingredients twice, which I love. And the onions are clinging together a little bit, so break them up so they disperse themselves throughout the mac and cheese. And here we go with the oat milk. So hopefully I convinced you from the last recipe that it's okay to use, it's okay to use the oat milk. Same thing, I'll put this on medium high so it can start to simmer. All right, how are we doing? Any questions so far? We're about halfway through these recipes. And we might run a little bit over, so I hope you still hang out with me. If you have to hop off, that's fine, of course. Going to add a little bit of salt. A little bit of pepper. Gail, is Erin still on or did she hop off?
She hopped off.
Okay. Do you happen, off the top of my head, we have a lot of really good speaker series and Ask the Expert and virtual hangouts coming up for the rest of the month. So make sure you check your inboxes and join those. We always put them up on our website in the Her library. So always go back and check to see if there's anything new. We also, once we're done with these at the end of the season, we put them on, we upload these up into Her library as well. And I just missed that comment if it was a question or a comment. All right, let's go ahead.
It was just Dina saying that she had to go, but she'll watch the replay. Thanks for
Good.
joining us.
Good, yes, thank you. All right, so let's move to our last recipe, which is our cranberry sauce. I'm going to get this going as this starts to simmer. So
Michelle, I'm sorry, there's also a question from Morgan. Her husband has an oat allergy, and is there another plant-based milk that will thicken as well?
yes, you know, the almond milk does have a little bit more water to it. So you might have to add a little bit more flour to get it to thicken up, but using maybe a macadamia nut milk might kick it up a little bit with the thickness. But try the almond milk and continue to whisk it, maybe continuously, just to incorporate that air. The air will make it thicken up as well. So, yeah. All right, so we talked at the beginning of class about the wonderful benefits of cranberries. I love, love, love this recipe, and no one else in my family does, so I get to eat it all. 2 years ago, we had, my husband and I had COVID. So this was before the vaccine, and my husband, he was sick. I was sick too, but I was able to make Thanksgiving dinner just for my son and I made this recipe, but it calls for sugar, the original recipe. It was 1 full cup of sugar, and I ate this whole thing in 24 hours. So I think about how I ate a cup of sugar in 24 hours, and it's like, wow, but I deserved it. I went through, tough. I went through COVID. It was tough. So for this, we're going to substitute the sugar for honey. So I have my bags of cranberries here. I put in two bags. So it's a little more than what the recipe calls for, but that's just more for me. I'm using just a 1/2 cup of water and a 1/2 cup of honey. So it doesn't look like a lot of liquid. And once I put this in, once I put the honey in, I will let it simmer on the stove until the cranberries start to break down and even pop. And it starts making its own liquid, and it starts to thicken up. So if you are one of those that uses canned cranberries, totally fine. It's simple. Someone once said to me, my cranberry sauce needs to be in a cylinder, in a cylinder shape, and it needs to have the lines so I know where to slice it. That's fine. Totally fine. All right, so I'll set this over here. I'll start heating this up. Put it on like a medium high, and you might be able to start to hear them pop once they break down. All right, so my sauce is thickening here, just like the other one. Now for this sauce, you don't have to go as thick because we're going to be adding a lot of cheese. So if you want to go non-dairy, completely plant-based, I think that's what you see most of for the non-dairy or alternative cheeses is that shredded cheese. Daya, D-A-Y-A makes one, but I know there's so many more out there that you can choose from. They sometimes need a little help with melting, but once, you know, this is pretty high on high heat and the sauce is really high, I think it, or the sauce is really hot, so I think it will melt nicely. Also too, I wanted to mention when I was doing the green beans, I already had them laid out in the glass dish. If you're using a big enough pan, you can throw the green beans in there and give it a good mix that way and then put it in the pan. And same thing with the broccoli and the pasta. I could throw this all in here, but I did not pull out my large skillet. So that's why I already have it laid out in the dish. And I can't remember if I mentioned this either. So I did grease the pans with, or the dishes with the cooking spray. If you do use cooking spray, make sure it just says olive oil or just avocado oil on the outside or in the where the ingredients. If there's some other things going on, I would try to grab the other one. Just from a chemical standpoint, and those are some pretty harsh chemicals in the sprays. All right, so I don't know if you can hear that. The cranberries are starting to pop. And they're starting to break down. All right, so I'm going to take this off heat. Again, it's not as thick as the mushroom sauce. And here we go. Keep moving these silicone. All right, so here's where I will add the cheese. Don't be alarmed. Again, we're not eating all of this in one sitting, right? So I gave a presentation the other day on self-care. So there was a lot of different topics. And one of the topics towards the end was self-care during the holidays. So we need to indulge in those feel-good comfort foods that we enjoy. Most of the time, we're only getting them one time a year. So, but we also need to practice moderation, right? So as we eat all of the good stuff during the holidays, filling our plates mostly with plant foods, and then having a little bit of the good stuff is completely fine. Like I said earlier, 'tis the season. This over here to larger. Okay. So as this melts down, the sauce gets a little bit thicker. And one thing I'm not a fan of either during the holidays, all of the unrealistic expectations, you know, things like how to lose weight during the holidays, how to not get sick during the holidays, make sure you exercise every single day. I think a lot of that can be very stressful, especially for those of us that are very busy during the holidays, just busy in general. So whatever you can do, don't beat yourself up and feel good about that. We want to enjoy the holidays. There was something someone just told me about. It was starting, December 1st, 31 days of 30 minutes of exercise per day. That's great. That's great if you want to challenge yourself, but if that's something you can't accomplish, that's okay. Move some of this out of the way. I'll bring my mac and my pasta and broccoli back over. I will try to gracefully pour this on top. Before we do that, I'm going to check on the green beans. I just got squirted with a cranberry, so make sure you're not wearing a white blouse or a white shirt. But that looks pretty thick too, right? Gail, are you guys still there? Did I lose you?
We're still there. That looks absolutely yummy, I must say.
Yeah.
I'll be swinging by later.
Yeah, Gail and I don't live that far from each other, so you're more than welcome to. All right. So this I will spread around as well, and there's just one more step to this.
So did you use a sharp cheddar?
I did, yes. I love sharp cheddar. You can use a mild cheddar, any type of cheese you can mix. There's the 4 blended cheese, 4 different types of cheese. You could use that as well. Oh, this smells so good.
And do you cook the banza or the chickpea pasta as long as the instructions call for? I find it to be a little fragile at times.
Yeah, so in the recipe that everyone's going to get, it should say to maybe go 1 or 2 minutes less.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay, so that's mixed well. The cranberries are doing a good job over there. Make sure you get all the cheese. Get all the cheese. And this is great because usually, so my son is working, so this will be nice just to add for tonight for dinner, just maybe a piece of fish I'll probably add to it. Not to this, but on the side. So it's nice to have. The best thing about these cooking demos is that there's food to eat afterwards. All right, so the last step here, we are going to add some panko. So panko is a Japanese style breadcrumb. I grew up on Progresso, so if that's what you have, if you compare though the ingredients of panko and Progresso or any type of breadcrumb out there, there's a big difference. All right, so this is the one that was in my grocery store. I found it in the international aisle. It just has wheat flour, salt, yeast, sugar, a little bit of sugar. I'm surprised they even added that because it looks like just a gram, and yeast. Yes, I said that, yeast. So if you do not want to use something like this, I'm sure there's gluten-free breadcrumbs out there as well. Last but not least, a little bit of Parmesan. You can leave this out if you don't want it. I will bake this and then put it under the broiler just to make it nice and brown on top. Okay. A couple things about the cranberries. You know, if you do not like that chunky texture, you could use a potato masher and really break these apart, or you can leave it nice and chunky. As this stands, as this sits, it will thicken up a little bit. So this looks pretty cooked down. And it is such a beautiful color. So I will let this sit for a little bit so it can thicken up. I'm going to go back to the recipe we started at the beginning, and that's the warming milk punch. Oh my gosh, the cranberry smells so good. Okay, let's bring these ingredients over.
I will say I did get to try the warming milk punch recipe already. We had a baby shower, for a staff baby shower a few weeks ago. We have 2 little girls coming to our family. And Michelle brought this for us to try, and it really was wonderful and really would be a great accompaniment to any kind of gathering over the holidays.
Yeah, absolutely. For the cold. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, so tried it out on the staff. So this has been infusing, as I mentioned, I'm using a cheesecloth, so we can drain all those bits and pieces out. Just going to I'm not gonna use that one. Grab another spoon. So this makes a lot more than what you will need for your warming milk punch. So with any extras, maybe put a teaspoon of it in your tea. All right, so this is double layered cheesecloth, and just squeezing it out. I'm going to rinse this pan or saucepan so I can reuse it. And I did not forget about those green beans. So I have my small saucepan. Start to warm that up. So this is kind of a as you please recipe. I have my almond milk, about a half a cup of almond milk. Not almond milk, oat milk. Some vanilla. And before class, I made some tea, and it's been sitting here. The sky's the limit on what tea. The recipe calls for Darjeeling, but I'm just using regular black tea. I think a spiced chai or something like that would work well. And yes, a couple. I keep moving my utensils around on me. Good thing I have clean dishes. All right, so I'm just going to use a little less than a tablespoon to sweeten it up. And again, this is something that you don't have to completely cook. You're really just warming it. While that's warming up, I'm going to go back to the cranberries and finish them. All right, so cranberries without sugar can be bitter. So this is where you can add a little bit more citrus. We're going to zest some orange. If you're not a fan of orange, you can leave it out and maybe add a little bit more honey, but I feel like the citrus cuts that bitterness down a little bit. So this is a microplane. You can use it to zest any type of citrus. So lemon, lime, orange. You can also use it for ginger and garlic. I will cut the orange and use fresh orange juice. If you have some orange juice, you could just pour it in. There we go. I almost did forget about them. Perfect. So I just cut my onion. Need to pop out. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you. That's all you're going to need. Just half the orange. All right, let me show you what this looks like. Everything's coming together nicely. This will be the first thing that I eat after class. If you want to garnish it with a little bit of mint, that would be pretty, but look at the gorgeous color of this. So I obviously refrigerate it, but when I want to eat my leftovers, I'll bring it to room temperature. That's how I like it, but of course you can have it cold. Let's do the warming milk punch. Make sure that you have something that's not going to crack or break when you put some warm liquid. Let's see if I can do this gracefully as well. There we go. Last but not least, which I forgot to do, Gail, at our party, we were having so much fun. This is one of those jars that you have to put your hand in carefully. Freshly grated nutmeg. So not that you'd be able to see this, but it sure looks pretty on top.
And I'll just mention that this is also a great recipe that you can make a larger quantity and put in a crock pot like we did for the crowd.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. So here's your warming milk punch that you can enjoy by the fireside, I guess, or while you're cozying up. That's good. No more sugar. No more sugar is needed. All right, let me plate up we're wrapping this up. Let me put the green beans in a plate. And I bought, if out in this neck of the woods, Wegmans grocery store, they sell in the produce department, there's like a freestanding freestanding end cap that they sell a lot of spices in their whole form. So that's where I got the fresh nutmeg. I will probably have that nutmeg for the rest of my life. I guarantee I will never use all of that nutmeg. So if you want any, let me know. I can meet you somewhere. All right. Let me turn this first so I can show you what it looks like with the nice brown. All right. So here is the green bean casserole. Looks similar, right? It doesn't look too different than the old school green bean casserole. So we have the nice browned onions. Yes, it is yum, that's for sure. All right, so the last recipe, the mac and cheese, it's just about done. Honestly, I'd probably give it a little more time, but I don't think everyone wants to spend the entire afternoon with us. So I might pull that out. Any questions or anything that I can answer, comments, substitutions? Of course, I will be sending the recipes. If you have not had a chance to hop on one of Aubrey's cooking demos, hers are building a better breakfast. So I think she was doing like a tofu scramble, some muffins, and maybe overnight oats. So that's a good one to join too. I will put her link in. She still has 2 classes left for December. So that's definitely something you might want to hop on. And we are planning our January, February. Ooh, nice. Our January, February cooking demos. My theme will be winter fruits. So think of persimmons, tangerines, so all of those winter fruits that we really probably don't eat as much and want to share the love with those winter fruits. I know a lot of us prefer the summer fruits, but I think it would be a good opportunity to showcase some of those winter fruits as well. And Erin will be doing tacos. So all different types of tacos. Those links will be coming out probably in the next, I don't know, maybe next week. I'm not completely sure, but we are ready to start launching those. All right. So here's your nice, thick and creamy mac and cheese. You can see how it browned a little bit on top. So I just used the broiler just to get the pretty color. But that is the last recipe. Kind of goes fast and furious at the end. All right. So any questions about these 3 recipes? I hope you try them. I hope you send pictures. Looks so good. Yes.
Angela's asking, Angela, which recipe are you looking for? The green bean casserole or the mac and cheese? The green bean, I'll put that in the chat again.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this little this cooking demo with a little bit of a lightening up of the classic dishes. I think so far, after doing 2.5 years of the cooking demos, I think this is my favorite. These dishes right here, full a lot of flavors, and I promise they're still creamy and delicious and full of flavor. So thank you for joining, especially on a Saturday morning. Have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, thanks, Michelle.
You're
And
welcome.
thanks everyone for joining us.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for all the